before we start, let's think about what makes a neighborhood. What makes a neighborhood? What makes a city friendly to the development of neighborhoods? And I think that we can see that Holland, Michigan has been successful in forming neighborhoods downtown that are interesting and beautiful. And that was through a long history. We know that Holland had a terrible fire in 1871, the same year as the Chicago fire. No, sparks did not fly from Chicago to here, but it was the same weather conditions. And about a third of the town was burned down. Tragic as that was, it did stimulate a lot of new building between 1871 and 1920, at a time when the community had been here since 1847, when Van Raalte came, to 1871. That generation of people had built, well, by the third year that Van Raalte was here, he had 600 houses. And a visitor who came from New York said that they couldn't believe how every single house had beautiful white curtains at the windows. They were stunned. So it seems like a very neat Dutch village, you know, going way back, and that tradition was there. What other traditions were there? Well, this is a furniture area. Look at Grand Rapids and Holland and the furniture businesses that they had. So wood was abundant, and carpentry skills, therefore, were also abundant, not just lumberjacks, but all of the abilities with carpentry that go into making furniture were also, you know, available to the residents of Holland. So it was known. The other thing I think is important is, of course, in Holland, in the Netherlands, there are so many people for a tiny country that you have to make the most of a small space. So as you become more and more wealthy, you just glorify the small space that you're in. But did we build mansions in Holland, Michigan? I don't see very many houses in Holland, Michigan that I consider a mansion. You know, in a few weeks, HASP is going to sponsor a trip to Muskegon to visit Muskegon's mansions. Well, I'll probably go on that trip and see what they have to offer. But when you think about it, Holland is full of houses that show prosperity and show pride of ownership, but they're not mansions. They're just beautiful houses with maybe a front stairs and a back stairs and enough bedrooms to be a family, and plenty of beauty in the woodwork and the landscaping and everything, but model houses. So but you need a historic district then. And if Holland goes through a down slump into certain periods of time, like between World War II and maybe the 80s, I don't think that Holland ever had anything that you could call a slum or even close to it. It had more depressed areas where things were not being taken care of like you would want, but it never had something that was way down to the dregs. And in the 80s, at some point in the 80s, Holland first decided, with the vote of the people, to form a historic district for the first time, and to designate a certain area. And that would have been the one that's 12th Street and kind of the downtown area. Then between then and the 90s, there became 4 historic districts that we have today. And Amy will show you those on a map. And to get the buy-in to having a historic district at all, you have to have the homeowners believe that this is not only the right thing to do for them personally, but that builds a neighborhood that they want to see, that it honors the city and the history of the city, and have some of those common purposes with other people that want to create a neighborhood. How many of you agree with that there was a community spirit here that wanted to build up the downtown? Then in the 90s, President Vanderwerf of Hope College decided that he would like to see more of the homes that were within walking distance of the college to be upgraded, because he had faculty and staff who needed homes and would love to walk to work. So there was an incentive created at Hope College that more faculty and staff could walk to work, and they would need fewer parking places that way. And people would save money that way if they could walk to work. And so he helped to create Homecor in a group of people, private donors that used private money to create an effort to increase and the honor of the historic homes. So that brings us, and I'm going to circulate 2 pamphlets here that also create neighborhood. One thing that creates neighborhood is public parks, and in the public parks and on the streets, public art. So circulate these pamphlets and look at, this shows you the extent of Hope's campus today. So you get a feeling for how important to the downtown Hope's campus is and its immediate environment. These can just be passed around, and other copies are available at the Visitors Bureau, which is just a couple doors away down the street. On the back of the public art thing, there's a thing you can scan, and then online will come up pictures of each one of these pieces of public art. And that's another thing for which I think Holland's neighborhoods are noted, for the downtown sculptures and otherwise as well. Now, I've known Amy since early in the time that I moved back to Holland, starting in 2016, and decided that this would be my home. And so Amy has been executive director of Homecor, which is a nonprofit founded by local philanthropists. And she lives in Holland and has raised a family here and has been preserving and improving homes near downtown for over 20 years. And the material she's going to show you is going to mention 54 homes in the downtown area that have been renovated and handled by Homecor. And so you'll get some details on how that happens both this week and next week. All right. Are there any questions? Okay. Amy, thank you.
Okay. How is the volume? Sound good? All right. I feel like my ear is not shaped correctly for this, so it feels like it's going to fall off. So if that happens, we'll move on. Thank you for the introduction. Linda was told that the clocks are fast, so she had to go for a little bit, but thank you for the intro. So Homecor, we're a nonprofit organization, so I'm going to talk to you about that. If you look at the description of our class today, it was learn how homes are selected, upgraded, and resold through Homecor using private funds rather than tax dollars. And then I'll have lots of before and after photos because everyone likes those. So I will try to share the good, the bad, the ugly, the smelly, all those things. So as Linda touched on, I have lived here since our family moved here in high school, which was in the late 80s. I am the executive director of Homecor. I'm also a licensed builder. The construction was my family's business growing up. So, and then I'm also a licensed real estate broker as well. My history was always new home construction and land development. So my maiden name is Bosgraf, which may be a name that some of you recognize from developments around here. My dad's first experiment in land development was when he turned his sod farm in Burnups, Michigan into Sandy Pines. Have any of you heard of Sandy Pines? So that was his first development. And then my brothers, myself, other people have, or other family members have been building new homes. So that means whenever I would take my dad through one of these Homecor homes that might be 100 years old that I plan to remodel, he'd kind of look around and say, when's the bulldozer showing up? So he was probably my hardest sell on why some of these homes are worth it to put all this money into. So that's the perspective that I was coming from, was always new construction. Then started doing the work for Homecor and learned the remodeling and the fun and challenging things that go along with that. So Homecor, we have 2 things that we do. We give grants to homeowners So people who already own their home, we work in a specific area, which we call the downtown neighborhoods. And to us, that means basically from where we're sitting to 24th Street, and then from Fairbanks to Van Raalte Avenue. So that's how we define our boundary. We've been doing that since 1996, where we give out anywhere from 30 to 60 grants per year for people that are income constrained to help them fix up their homes. The grants are up to $3,000, so relatively small. And we're a very simple organization. I have a volunteer board of directors. I'm just paid a stipend to do that. But we will talk more about that at the second session, which is next week. So the grants we'll cover more next time. So then the renovations is something that we started about 10 years after we were founded in 1996. So I'm going to talk about the 1990s. Who was here in the 1990s? Oh, not as many of you as I thought. So what I remember and what the news clips will draw light to or remind me of is that the downtown was being revitalized. The mall and the development on 31 was just kind of ramping up. And we all thought downtown would die and go away because the mall was the place to be and was where the cool kids were going to hang out. And how wrong we were. But the 90s was when Gordon Van Wylen, so do you recognize that name from being a past president of Hope College? So Gordon Van Wylen and other smart business owners and people said, it's great if downtown is revitalized and the stores look wonderful and Main Street looks wonderful, but if the houses around it do not look well cared for and maintained, then nobody's going to want to walk to downtown. Nobody is going to want to spend time there if the housing around it is not also looking strong. So that's when they founded Homecor to support homeowners who needed a new roof, needed a new furnace, needed a bathroom that worked. So the big things, not the kitchen remodels, not the cutesy stuff, but the big things. That's when they formed to give these grants out to homeowners. And that's something that we still do today. And we'll talk about more next week. So now the 2010s come around and we had all kinds of bank-owned homes because of the recession. So there was hundreds of homes. I think in our target area of those downtown neighborhoods that I defined, I think at one time we counted 440 vacant and bank-owned homes. So that's when I was a volunteer board member and also a licensed builder. So our board said, what if we bought one of these houses, fixed it up? And by we, they meant me, Amy, like, why don't you do this? And let's see how it goes. So we bought one home, fixed it up, sold it. And that's how we started our renovations. So it was just kind of a one at a time. Let's give it a try, see what happens. And then we ramped it up as the years went by. And I'll talk about what ramping it up looks like. So again, the grants started in the 1990s. 10 years later, we started doing these home renovations. Okay. Going back to this picture, I forgot about this, but there was actually a couple of fire bombings, which is why I had that picture of so crime, gangs. I remember being told not to go to the 7-Eleven on 16th and Central when I was in high school, because that was where the bad people hung out and the gangs. And I think it's kind of cool that I would not say that to my child now, that I feel like we don't have that issue. So I'm proud of that. Not because of anything we did, just that what Holland did. So now Homecor, we're going to do renovations. we talked as a board, what are some ground rules? One of them was collaborate. Another saying no to funds that have strings attached. And then the third was just start. So collaboration. One of our partners is Jubilee Ministries. And at the time, they had started doing same idea. There's all these vacant, bank-owned homes because of the foreclosure crisis. They started doing kind of the same thing. We had different ways of going about it as far as how we used labor and volunteer and volunteers. But we were essentially doing the same thing. So we met, our boards met, and we said, let's do this together. We can still be separate because we have other things going on, us, our grants program, them, their Midtown Center and other things. But let's raise funds together because otherwise we're just going to be going to the same people asking for the same money. Let's look at houses together and see which one fits each organization better to do that one. So there's ways that we collaborated, but it didn't make any sense for us to merge. So collaboration with Jubilee was one of the things that we laid as a ground rule. The second one was saying no to funds that have strings attached. As a small nonprofit, you can talk me into doing anything once, like just give it a try, see what happens, why not? It was giving those things a try that had strings attached. So in the foreclosure crisis, there was a neighborhood's, what did it stand for? They were called NSP funds, and they were federal funds. But that meant there was a lot of boxes to check and a lot of certain people that you had to hire, certain ways you had to do your accounting. And we found that it cost us 40% more to do a home that way. And it took us about 50% longer. Not that it wasn't a good program, but it wasn't a good program for us because we could just ask the people of Holland for money and they gave it to us. So we thought, why would we do it the other way if we can just ask and people will give us the money to do it? And the reason people gave us the money to do it was we had this track record of our grants program, which has always been run just very simply and very little overhead. So at this point, we're still able to do that we can say no to funds because we've found a way to do it without those that are just more rules than we want, I should say, than I want to put up with. And then starting, so at that time, there were hundreds of homes to pick from. It wasn't hard to buy a house, and we didn't feel like we had to talk about it. We had to plan about it. We had to think of all the what ifs. It was just, let's just pick one. Let's just start. What's the worst that could happen? We're not talking millions of dollars. We're talking, not very much. So starting was a big deal, just doing it. So this is us since the 2010s. This is our map showing all the homes that we've done, which is 54 homes. So the numbers behind that are when you add up all the sales prices of those homes, it's $8.5 million. So the original value of those homes was at least half of that. So I guess what's been added to the city tax rolls has been well over $5 million on just one house at a time. Linda, do you want me to stop for questions or should I go on?
Do you want to see this map for just a minute or so while you look at really what's on it, or do you want to go ahead and?
Okay, we'll keep going.
Go ahead. Okay.
All right. So how do we choose homes? It's a different conversation now than it was 20 years ago, because 20 years ago we had all these houses to choose from, and we were more worried about selling them than we were about buying one to buy. Now it is very hard to buy any homes, so we have gotten slower because our goal is to get distressed homes fixed up and in the hands of owner occupants. So if an owner occupant can just buy the house without us getting involved and fix it up and live there, there's no reason for us to compete with them. So we are pretty selective in how we go after homes. With that being said, what we use as selection criteria is value. So if the house is at least 50% below the median price of the other homes in that neighborhood, and a lot of the time neighborhood for us is just block by block, because if you live in the downtown neighborhoods and are familiar with them, you know that one block can have a much different flavor than one block over. So I'll look at a certain block, see how many homes are rentals versus homeowner occupied. Not that rental is bad, not that homeownership is bad, but a balance is good. So we'll look at just the health of that block and the value of the home that we're targeting to buy. And if it falls well below the block, we know it's usually pretty obvious from the street. We all know the ugliest house on the block when we see it. So that one's not real hard. Appearance. So obviously we're looking for the dogs, but the appearance is also how visible is it? So if it's on the busy East 16th Street corridor, that's important to us because we want people to see a good facade when they're going through our streets. So a dead end street that doesn't get any traffic may not be as high a priority for us. So it's just not just that the house may look terrible compared to the neighboring homes, but knowing that a good renovation will make a big difference because of how visible it is. So maybe it's a corner or a busy place. Investment in place. This criteria refers to if there's a business district, a park, or something nearby that by us investing in homes, we're investing in that business district by bringing more life and contributing to what people are already doing. And then problems. So there are problem homes. There's the house that has a lot of police calls or a lot of housing code violations. The things that the city is just always out ticketing. And a lot of the time we'll get a heads up from the city on those saying, can you make contact with these people and see what's going on? Like, do they need resources and help from us? Do they want to sell? What's the story? So there's also problem properties that we'll target, not necessarily because they look bad, but just they've been a problem in the neighborhood. So what did our first house look like? I don't really know what I did in 2007 for photos, but I could not find any good ones of the interior, which I really wish I had because it was used as the Sinners Motorcycle Club. So it was a single family house. It's just west of Lincoln, right next to the railroad tracks on 16th Street, East 16th. So all of the windows were boarded up from the inside. So from the outside, it looked like windows, but you could not see anything that was going on. There was not a single strip of daylight to be found in the house. There was lots of interesting things inside, and I just wish I had pictures, but I don't. I met with the head of the motorcycles, the Sinners Motorcycle Clubhouse. His name was Round Man. I don't know why his name was Round Man, but that was his name.
How many of you feel like you have a good imagination of what we're looking at?
Yeah. So we purchased the home in 2007 for $53,800. And then we did a full renovation over 6 months. And can you believe it? We sold it for $88,000 and we still lost money. So it was, even though you could buy a house at that time for $53,800, put money into it, we could only sell it for $88,000. And that was kind of a tough sell. I mean, it was by the railroad tracks. It's on busy 16th Street. It was in the very depressed market of 2007. But we said, well, we try not to lose or use the term lost money. I'm supposed to say investment, like we invested in the neighborhood. But yes, we did go in the red. But we're a nonprofit, so that's what we're supposed to do, right? So it was a neighborhood gain, we say, but a monetary loss. So then this
There-
is a picture of,
Sorry.
oh,
Amy, there's a question.
okay.
Is there a connection with the prisoner reentry housing market?
Is there a question with the what?
With the prisoner reentry housing market?
No. Is there a connection with the prisoner reentry program? No, we do not have a connection. We, what that question may be getting to is for 2 homes. I think we used the local nonprofit through 360 at the time, where we did use some people, but that was probably, yeah, in the early stages. We don't do that anymore. So the last 10 years, which is 44 homes for us, the lowest sales price, so not what we bought the house for, but what we've sold the house for, has been $98,000. Our highest sales price has been a $400,000 house. And then an average sale price over those 44 is $191,000. And we will look at this later in the presentation about how that falls into affordable housing. So we will have that conversation about whether this is affordable or not. So the total support needed for those 44 homes has been $281,000 or $67 or $6,700 per home. So if you want to use the bad word that I'm not supposed to use, we've lost $6,700 per house, or that's what we've had to invest from donors per house to make this happen. So I think if you stack us up against other programs, that's very efficient. So that's paying me, that's an office if we had one. We don't. So that's stamps, that's whatever. So that is everything. All right, now I was going to just look at some specific projects just to give you some before and afters and some idea to show you what we do. So Central Commons is our development that we did on the corner of 16th, which is at the top of the screen, and Central down your left side. So these are the 6 small homes or tiny homes on the corner. And then these are 3 homes that we renovated. So this is an example of that collaboration or partnership with Jubilee Ministries, that there were 4 homes on 4 lots. And the one on the corner was demolished and Jubilee built the 6 new tiny homes that you see there today. And then we took the 3 homes, which were all 2-family rentals. They each had they had shared driveways that came off of 16th Street, no garages, so 2 apartments in each home. So we took those 3 homes, took the driveways off of 16th Street, put in the alley that serves the 3 new garages to the back, and converted them to single-family homes. So that is Central Commons. Here is an example of a before and after. So the first house next to the tiny houses, so just east of the tiny houses, to the left is the before, to the right is the after. Hopefully you can tell that. And then going down the road, or we have the one on the left, the way we found it. And then now to the right. And then one more to the left, we had the old asbestos siding on the outside, and now we have the new. And obviously the interiors are just pretty much taken down to studs and redone as well. So you have a couple of interior shots. Bottom left shows you the new garages, 2-stall garages that were added. Yes.
So when you purchase these,
Mhm.
do they rent? They were rentals, right? I mean.
Yes, when we purchased the homes, these particular ones were rentals.
So you're looking at converting rentals into single family ownership, right?
Not always.
Not always. Well, do you have like a Habitat for Humanity? You have a list of people eligible to then, no, you don't.
No,
It's not like Habitat that.
no, no. And I will talk about that a little later as well, as far as criteria for buyers.
Yep.
So yeah, questions of who are we buying these homes from? We have a lot of different, we are not trying to get rid of rentals, and especially in this market where kind of everything is needed, rentals and home ownership. It was just at the time when we had bank foreclosures, there were landlords who were coming in who had never been landlords before and were buying 40 homes. Like there was literally a guy who bought, I think, 52 homes in our neighborhoods. So it was this huge swing where blocks, if you're looking at block by block by block, some blocks had been, 70%, 80% home ownership, now had gone to maybe 10% home ownership. So our goal at that time was to try to buy some of these, ill-maintained, unsafe, a lot of the time, rental homes and convert them back to home ownership. Not because, again, rentals are bad, but just to swing the pendulum back a little bit further to home ownership. But then we have bought plenty of homes through mortgage foreclosure, tax foreclosure, from landlords who want to get out of the business. So they'll sell us 5 at a time, or we renovated one house. I think I have a picture later that had been vacant for 47 years. 47, not 4 years, not 7 years, 47 years. So it was just, when you talk to the seller at the closing, they always had plans to remodel it and just never did. 47 years. So we all know that a house sitting empty for 47 years on your block is not something you'd like. So that was a big win for us to get that home. Yeah. But I will talk about who our buyers are a little bit later.
But Amy, I think, do you have a requirement that it must be owner occupied?
Yes.
It must be owner occupied, and that stays on the deed, or it's only for the next owner?
Yes. So we do have a criteria that the home must be owner occupied by the buyer. So when they buy it, there's a deed restriction that just says owner must live there. And that stays with the property. And that was, again, kind of going back to when we started raising funds. We were in a market where there were so many rentals, and we were trying to push it back to home ownership in targeted areas. And so that was our donors, and our goal was to, how do we fix this up, keep it as an owner occupied house versus a landlord buying it in 6 months or something like that. So, so this is just another shot of the tiny homes on the corner. So property, oh, did I go the opposite way? So that we already talked about, right? That looks familiar. Okay. All right. Oh, I know what I was going to talk about. So, looking at the property selection criteria, we had this central commons on the corner of 16th and Central. And then it seemed like all these other homes on 16th, East 16th came up about the same time. And then 3 homes on West 16th came up the same time. So we ended up, I think we've now done 11 homes just on 16th Street, 8 on the east and 3 on the west. So again, that was that busy corridor. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of traffic. That's kind of a gateway, I think of as to our city. And to our downtown. So that was important to us. We also had a cluster of homes here on 17th Street, where if you're coming from the west, a lot of the time you'll take 17th Street east until you get to River. So that's also that busy stretch of 17th Street. So that was an example of our property selection criteria, was really this appearance. So let's focus on a busy area. I'll get just, and then the next area that we went to was Washington Boulevard. So the Washington Square district. My houses, I realized, kind of moved a little off, but we had this cluster kind of all at the same time. And that was where we saw that we had Washington Business District. And there was just happened to be a number of homes that were kind of the worst on the block around there at that time. So that was where we made the strategic decision to purchase those to continue that investment in place. So one of the reasons I say that is we're not always making the smart buy if you're looking at this as an investor. So we're not buying the least expensive, the easiest house to get. It's the house that may have a purpose beyond just buying it because it's cheap. And we also, don't have a desire to compete with investors. So we are often looking at the worst of the worst and the homes that don't make economic sense for an investor to put money into. We'll see a few pictures of those later. So you have a question?
Yes, there's a question on Zoom again. Do the Jubilee 6 homes have the same owner occupied restriction?
As far as I know, they still have the restriction in place to be owner occupied for the 6 homes on that Jubilee did. So they did the same thing that we did because we collaborated on that, but they also have the deed restriction. All right, so this is where we're going to talk about the housing needs and a little bit getting into the affordability. So Ottawa County Housing Next is the organization that does this market study, and they update it every 5 years. So 2025 is the latest report. If you want to see all the, I don't even know how many pages it is. It's a lot, hundreds, with all the graphs and maps and things, demographics. The website is at the top there, housingnext.org is where you can find all of this. So they just updated this in 2025, and it talks about the demand, and this is just for the city of Holland. So the study is done for all of Ottawa County, but then they break it out into a couple of subgroups, the city of Holland being one of them. So the top, just have a pointer. Oh, it does. Can you see my little red dot? Okay. All right, so this top graph is rental demand by income level and rent. So how we read this is percent of median income. So that's a number or a term that us nonprofits in the housing sector throw out a lot as we look at the area median income, the AMI. So it adjusts by people in the household. So if you have 4 people in the household versus 2 people in the household, it'll change. But this is the percent of median income, what that income range is, and then the monthly rent range that would be affordable for that income range, and then how many rental units are needed in each of those categories. So again, just the city of Holland, not Ottawa County. So for rentals, this is what it's saying is the demand. We are not in the rental category at all. So this is where you have like Dwelling Place out of Grand Rapids is looking to do some development that is, I believe, in these 2 categories. Community Action House is partnering with them on some of those. These categories are kind of where you get into where you'll see a market rate builder, an investor who can make that work if they have tax incentives or other incentives. But a market person looking to make money is probably not going to be able to build this without any incentives. And then this is where you get more into the market rate. So if I'm an investor and want to make some money, I pretty much have to stay here. That kind of carries down to this graph. So this, or chart, So this is the for sale demand. So under 50% AMI means that you make under $50,000. And that means that your for sale price range has to be under $171,000. And it's saying in the city of Holland over the next 5 years, they would want to see 30 of those built to meet demand. Going to the next category, 51 to 80%. This is your income range of 50 to 80. And then your fair sale price range is 170 to 270. This is where Habitat for Humanity works. So that's where they can, that's who they target. That's where the income has to meet those requirements for their families. They make that work by donations, by homeowner labor, what they call sweat equity. So that's where Habitat for Humanity works. And then you have the 81 to 120% AMI, which means your family makes between 82 and 123,000. And that says you should be able to afford a price point of 274 to 411. And they use that 30% income, that no more than 30% of your income should be spent on housing, is how all of these are, factored. So this is where Jubilee and us are trying to be. So if you remember a couple of pictures back, this graph, our lowest was 98, our highest was 400, which 400 was kind of an outlier, and our average has been the 191. So far, we've been able to, I don't even know what I'm pointing this at. So this, if you look at the numbers for sale units needed, this is the biggest range that has been identified as being needed. So if we could write the book on homes, it would be, and creating homes, it would be, we would want 800 created in the next 5 years. So I don't know exactly how to get that done. But
This is an amazing, I'm sorry. This is an amazing graph here. And those of you who go crazy when you see numbers on the board, it is very clear though. Do you want to spend a minute talking about this? Because this points out where is Holland, Michigan's greatest need. And according to this analysis, which is income based on what is real in Holland, we see that the biggest need is not in the lowest category of income at this time in how.
And I will point out that the last time this graph was published, so in 2020, actually, I think it was less than 5 years ago, it was more, there were more numbers down here and here. So it has shifted the other direction just because when you see a lot of the development, there's a lot of apartments that you see going up. And a lot of those are, do have some tax incentives and are being built in this area. So this number in particular has gone down a lot just because that's where progress has been made. And then you, I don't know what field of study this is, but it's not mine. But there's all these other factors about jobs and all of demographics of age and all of that that is factored into this report. So I just look at these numbers and say, oh, looks like we should keep doing what we're doing. So, yep.
Yeah, question that for sale housing gap estimate that shows the additional for sale units needed. On the other hand, if you're focusing on renovations, that's not really increasing. It's maybe changing from rental to for sale unit. But how is that really impacting or increasing the number of housing units needed? Doesn't it say there like you need 819 new construction units rather than just fixing up 819 existing units?
It's a good question. So there's that home that was vacant for 47 years. So when the census was done, that was a vacant home with nobody living there. The 5 homes that we bought from one landlord's estate that had been vacant for 7 to 10 years, each of them. That's 5 homes that came in that were not active or not utilized before. If somebody moves into assisted living, moves into out of the county, that unit becomes available that wasn't available before. So there are other ways to create these without just building new. So, but yeah, this would say that they want us to build a bunch of new. The problem is we're the city, we're not a suburb of farmland, so there's only so much property available to us.
It must also be somewhat related to, I'm sorry, what it takes to demolish a home and prepare it for another home to be put there. You probably have some idea whether that's a huge number or whether it's less than we might think to demolish a home and then fill in the hole.
It's a big number.
It is a big number.
Yeah, and I have that on the the agenda for next week.
Okay,
So
so
we are, yeah,
go ahead. So not only is the question, should we try to save this godforsaken, sad sack, shabby home because it's historic and it would look nice when it was fixed up, but does it also make financial sense when you look at the numbers, comparative numbers of tearing it down and starting over with new?
Yeah.
Which is subject to tariffs and all that, and, you know,
Yeah.
demolishing something American to
yeah,
not keep all those historic materials. But upsetting that all aside, it probably also makes sense when you look at the actual cost.
yeah. So when a reminder back to my dad's reaction of showing up at all these houses and asking when the dump truck is going to show up to haul away the debris. I do think there are 2 homes over those 54 that I got done and said, oops, we should have just scraped this and started over, because the numbers, what I thought I was getting into, we didn't pan out.
But you
So-
didn't have to tell your father about that.
Yeah, so I did not tell him he was right on those. But of those 54, yeah, there were 2 that they still turned out to be great homes, sturdy homes, safe homes that will last another 100 years, hopefully. But it took a lot more to get there than I anticipated. So,
The property next to, what do you call the Bell Renovation, what do you call that thing?
the Midtown Center.
Midtown.
Mhm.
The property that's vacant next to it for
So many years. I'm sure you looked into that to
Mhm.
do something similar to 16th and Central.
Yep.
But what prevents you from doing that? Is just the cost of the land?
Yeah, so the vacant property where back in the day, the Kentucky Fried Chicken was there.
right.
Yeah, so that has just had a big price tag on it for a long time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then when we look at what we're good at of single family homes or maybe small town homes, it feels like a hard block to build that on, that you maybe need something more high density than what we're good at building.
Then there's a new one, I think, going up a block away on River. Was that a demolition? That's a Homecor. It looks like a Homecor newly constructed home. It's on River and between 15th and 14th, I believe.
Oh, I think those are ladder homes, so a different
What is that?
organization.
What is Ladder?
Ladder Homes provides some transitional housing. So they build homes as rentals to people that then they support through social services that they offer as well.
I think we have to go back to our idea of holding the questions till the end. If you have a specific project you want to ask about or go back to something, Amy can back up, but let's
Okay.
finish the presentation so that we get through what Amy prepared.
Okay, all right. There isn't that much more. Just some pictures.
Yeah.
So this is the graph we've been using, like any market analysis. I struggle sometimes to believe it. Or how to figure out how to meet a price point like this. So this, and we'll talk about this next week of, I'll show you a picture of a hole in the ground and how much money it takes you just to get there. So when you look at that and how to do that for $171,000, even making zero money, is hard. This, again, this, just like the rental, when you get into this range, this is where if I'm an investor wanting to make money, I can make this work as a builder. But anything, it is my opinion that anything to the left of that, so anything 120% AMI and under, needs a nonprofit or a subsidy of some sort. Or one of my sons is a builder, a carpenter, who is in this income category. And I could see him doing a lot of the work himself. So you can make this work on an individual basis, but you can't make money as an investor doing that. So who buys our homes? Getting back to a question from earlier, they are owner occupants. I explained that we are trying to swing that pendulum back from rentals to owner occupants. We do put a deed restriction that just says it has to be an owner occupant, so they can have roommates, they can be a family structured, however, but the city is not supposed to issue a rental certificate for that home. And then income requirements, we do not have any. So that 50 to 80% AMI where Habitat works, they're providing a subsidy. There's volunteers, there's donations. We are getting donations from our donor investors, but we do not feel the need to put the income requirements on because we are not trying to target the lower AMI. We are trying to take the worst house on the block, making it one of the better. And by having somebody who may have a little more disposable income, we feel is a good thing for that block. So we are not too concerned about income requirements. The home buyer just applies for a loan, gets a loan, pays for the house, just like anybody. There's no special financing. What was I gonna say about that? Oh, yeah, we figure if somebody buys a home, and we also, it should be important to say we price it at market rate. So we're not pricing it at a reduced rate, we're pricing it at what the market would say it's worth. So when I talked about we lose $6,700 on average per home, some homes we lose $40,000. Some homes we make $12,000. So there's the average of $6,700 per home that we're losing or investing, and we're just pricing it by market. So somebody may get a great deal on a home because we put $40,000 more into it than we got out of it. But if they can be upwardly mobile by selling that home and moving on to the next thing in 5 years, that's fine with us. So these are some pictures. It's a little hard to see, but this is a old brick basement wall that I was curious what was behind the drywall that had been covering it. And I removed the drywall and that's what was found. So this is my son scraping out all the dirt that was falling and bringing it outside. And then we had to spend $56,000 putting a new basement in. So that's what we run into. So we know that we're buying the worst of the worst. We know that any investor who bought this house would lose their shirt and not want to do that again. And we say, well, that was fun. Let's do that again. So we run into a lot of homes that have been vacant and not maintained for a number of years. So we have like plumbing that has leaked into a home for however many years and caused all kinds of damage. We have our fair share of hoarders. So this was a house on Central and 18th that was a basement, 2 stories, a garage, completely full of stuff, including a dead and abandoned cat that was under a dresser. So that was just dumpsters upon dumpsters and donations to places before we could even get started. So there's a lot of And the interesting thing was this one was never even lived in by this owner. It was just where she stored all of her stuff. So she had plans to buy all of these things because she wanted to rent the house and others that she owned. And she ended up just storing it here for, this one had been vacant for, I think 9 years. So that she just kept adding stuff to it. This guy I have in here just because it seems like every house I do, I have a mascot who shows up. So on this one, it was this G.I. Joe kind of guy. And there's, yeah, always a creepy doll in the basement or you open a cupboard and the least expect, oh, yeah. This was, I feel like this looks like realtor Barbie and maybe me sometimes. So she was on this job on 16th Street. And again, this was a hoarder house with a collapsed ceiling with a bathroom above that had been leaking for a number of years. This was the vacant for 47 years house that they started painting and doing a bunch of work inside, but they hadn't replaced the roof. So then the roof was leaking and we had a big mold problem. So $12,000 of mold remediation later, we could start work on that one. So the 47-year-old vacant house was on East 17th Street. And one of my carpenters actually lived 3 houses down growing up for this street. And he said that they would call it the spooky house. And when they'd ride their bicycles past it, they'd hold their breath just because they thought it was bad luck to breathe as they were driving by. Not that it smelled or anything. They just always called it the spooky house. So that was fun for him to work on because it had been vacant his whole life. He's my age, so. This is an after, hopefully you can tell that. So this one looked really good on the exterior. We didn't do much there, but this will give you an idea of interiors. So a lot of the time we have some really cool things to work with. Stained glass windows, amazing staircases, original floors. I think this cabinetry was original, or at least an older vintage where the bases we replaced and did new layouts and stuff, but we try to mix kind of the new and the old. Here's another one, just again, kind of showing some of the fun aspects in an older home. So original wood floors and porch floors. And this was I forgot to put up before picture, but this we called the eggplant house because it was purple and green before we painted it the cream color. This is another interior. So this one had the really cool ceiling detail, a cool stairway, great original floors. So yeah, lots of, this one had the challenge of we kept the trim, but we took everything else down to studs because all the plaster was either hidden behind paneling or cracking. So we took everything down and replaced all the electrical, put new insulation in and did that. This is another one. Can you tell I like my original hardwood floors? So I will always try to save those. So the previous 2 homes were not in this historic district, but were historic by nature. This one is on 13th Street and is in the historic district. So this one, when you work on the interior, you can do anything you want, but you do have to get approval to do anything on the exterior, which this one we did not have to do a whole lot. It had the metal. Somebody did a really good job in these neighborhoods of selling people on those metal curly Q porch posts. I don't know what era that was, but there's a lot of those. So we did remove those and had to go to the historic committee to get approval to put spindles back that matched what we found in a picture. So. And then this is one of the new homes we've done. So most of our homes are whole house remodels, but this is one of 4 that we've done that are new construction. So this one is on West 15th Street.
Amy, could you tell us who you use? You have architects, you have interior designers, you have lots of builders, or how does this work?
So how it works is, I am the general contractor, so I hire all of the professional trade partners to work on the homes. So we do not, that is what separates us from a Habitat for Humanity, is we do not use volunteer labor. So we believe in workforce development and supporting the economy that way. So we do hire all of our people. But the design and is me. The latest two houses that we're finishing up are new construction, and Boscraft Homes has partnered with us on those. I twisted their arm. It wasn't hard. But they are, the thought process was when they shared their numbers of their buying power and their trades who work on new homes all the time, it was more efficient for them to actually build it than it was for us, because they offered to give up all their profit. So that helped. So my trades are used to working on the wonky electrical and the weird out of level stuff, and they thrive doing that. Their people do new construction all day, every day. So we have partnered with Boscraft on just these last two homes for new construction, but otherwise it's, yeah, me. These are just a couple of pictures. When I say we don't do volunteer, I lie a little bit, because this was pre-2020. So Holland Christian High School had a Wintram class that was just a week long that would meet between semesters. And they'd sign up to do a class, and ours was one of them. And so I would put them to work doing demo. So that's about all the volunteers that we've had. It was fun.
So to get a good grade, they had to temporarily be slave labor.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, we'll try anything once, and it worked out. So, so a recap before we get into questions is, we talked about today how Homecor selects our homes. So there's criteria for purchasing, whether it's value, appearance, a problem house, an investment in the place around it. How we upgrade them. So we do not use volunteer labor. We're using professional trade partners, and how we resell them at market rate to pretty much anyone who can give us the green money. And then how we utilize private funds. I guess I didn't really touch on that a lot. So when I say that we collaborated with Jubilee to raise money, we went to a group of people who have been interested in our two organizations, supporting us in other ways, and said, we know that we can turn this money. So we can buy a house, give us a couple of months, then we can sell it. So we know that we can turn the money, but we know that it's most likely gonna take a little bit to subsidize that. And instead of using government funds that have a lot of strings attached, we'd like you to give us a zero interest friendly loan and then a small kicker of a donation to cover that gap. So we didn't do it asking for $500, $50 here and there. We asked for a bigger commitment of $100,000 loan and then a $10,000 gift. And so that's what has been able to support us, that we started with a kitty that we've slowly depleted, but we've been able to turn that money over and over. So we asked for a 5-year commitment for that. It worked well. So we asked for another 5-year commitment. It worked well. And then we just asked for our third commitment of that. And they have said yes again. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. All right. That was it. Now we can open it up to questions.
I was just wondering, in your remodels, do you do 2-family homes to increase the availability of ownership that way?
Yes. So the question of 2-family homes, most of our homes that we've done that have been 2-family have been set up very poorly, that they were converted to 2-family with very, I would say, unsafe conditions like no fire break between the two units, things that we would be required to do nowadays. And so most of them we have converted to single family homes just because it wasn't economical or marketable to keep them as two family. But there's been, I think, 3 homes that we kept as two family. And it had that same deed restriction on it that one of the units had to be owner occupied, but they could rent the other one out. And that has worked well for us for those couple. We also worked getting the accessory dwelling unit approved in the city. And that was also our idea of how can we improve or get more housing is by creating these backyard cottages, granny flats. The official term is accessory dwelling unit. And so we also built one of those on 18th and Pine. And that's another one where you could live in the granny flat and rent out the house or vice versa.
I don't live in Holland, but I've lived in other cities that have a strong college or university presence.
Mhm.
And I don't know how many students say live in off-campus housing, but I would assume there are some unique issues that come with having a college in these neighborhoods. So my question is, what are those issues? And do you partner with Hope College to maybe solve some of these problems?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been a number of years since I've been in any room with the Hope College people. But I think that's because we worked out the issues that we were seeing. So when a lot of the homes converted from rental to, or sorry, from home ownership to rental during the foreclosure crisis, a bunch of us met, Jubilee, Habitat, Homecor, Hope College, the city, neighborhood people, to define kind of what is Hope's goals for their housing. And at that time, they defined kind of what they wanted their hard boundaries to be for Hope-owned houses. And then as far as the not Hope-owned Hope College rentals, those are some blocks that we've targeted. Mostly because we'll hear from homeowners who are saying, you know, we used to have all kinds of neighbors. Now it's just all college kids. Is there anything you can do? And we'll look at whatever houses we can that we could maybe try to shift back a little bit to have a little more balance. But yeah, but students can be great neighbors and then the next year not so great. So it is kind of a moving target sometimes.
You know, you build these wonderful homes, and faculty and staff want to be closer to where they work and to have that kind of, you know, community. So you know, it can work for individual home ownership too.
Yeah. Yep. I think Hope still has their walk to work program where they offer a small grant to live within a certain circumference of the college for any faculty. So
There are many college towns where when the college does not get involved in owning any small houses around the campus, it just goes downhill and it's just really shabby, rundown student apartments crammed, you know, 8 people in a building or something when there's no regulation by the city or by the college. And instead, Hope chose to own houses. And of course, when a house is bought by Hope College, it is transferred from a city house to be in the education district, right? But that still means they have to meet all the building codes and they can't exceed the occupancy that was authorized for the house. So it can't turn into just a, you know, overcrowded, low quality student housing. So when parents bring their students to come and visit Hope College, they get to see some of these cottages that Hope maintains. And so there's maybe a little bit of tension about, well, shouldn't they have been kept in the city inventory of colleges? But the neighbors around the college, and I being one of them, are more happy to see Hope College maintain a house and keep it as a cottage, because Hope does a beautiful job of keeping their cottages up. They're a credit to the street and to the community in the way that they look. And they do all meet the codes because they're inspected like anything else.
Yep.
So it's always a balance. But a college town does have a special realty problem, especially when it's located right close to downtown like
Yeah.
this.
And I will say that Holland has many great things going for it, one of them being the size. So the city often, if they hear complaints about a problem property, it's a phone call or a text to the landlord. So it's not a thing, it's just a, hey, we're getting complaints about this. We have these different neighborhood connector groups in the city that if the city sees that somebody's not getting their lawn mowed, it used to be just a nasty gram that the city would send that would ticket the homeowner and say, cut your lawn. And now we have these neighborhood connectors in place, not we meaning Homecor, but the neighborhood connector groups like East Core and West Core and Washington School of Neighbors, that they can knock on the person's door and say, hey, we notice your lawn isn't getting cut. Is there a physical issue? Did your lawnmower break? We have our tool lending library. We can help you out with that. So there's a lot of connections that are made because of the size of our city that can't be made in other places. For example, one of my brothers worked for a couple of years for the Inner City Christian Federation in Grand Rapids. And at the time they were buying all of these vacant homes for $1. So that sounds great to buy a home for $1, but it doesn't sound great when you know that he had hundreds of them to pick from because they were so valueless that he could buy them and then put a bunch of money into them. And then you still didn't know if you could sell them because nobody wanted to live there. So there is one house that we bought for $1. I think it was our third house through a federal program. And so after attorney fees, closing costs, that kind of thing, was a couple of $1,000s, but it was still a hard sell when we got done with it, even though we had the head start of buying it for $1. So, yeah.
Do you have any idea if there's of the average age of these homes in terms of when they were built? They look like probably 20s and 30s, but I'm curious if you've done any demographics on the age of the homes.
That would be a fun number to crunch and look up. I would say all of them that I've worked on have been between the high 1880s and 1925, as I think about the newest house besides new construction that I can recall working on. Yeah, they've all been old. Yeah.
I was just wondering, are Holland taxes an obstacle to people buying within the city? I found that I came from East Lansing where we had no industry, so our taxes were pretty high, but I found them to be pretty high here as well.
Yeah. So the question of are the taxes high? Unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of our buyers are first-time buyers, so they don't realize what it is compared to where they're coming from. So if they're coming from Lake Town, or it just isn't happening, this is their first home a lot of the time, and it's just normal. But yeah, our mills are higher than the surrounding townships. And what is also not great is when we hold the homes, we have to pay the non-homestead tax rate. So when we get that tax bill, it hurts as well. Usually the value is low because we haven't fixed it up yet or haven't finished fixing it up, but we pay the non-homestead tax rate. So.
You've mentioned that in the choice to not use money that has strings attached, that also saves time. So what would be an example? Or what would be the quickest turnaround that you've done with a pretty significant? And what would be the one that took the longest? And when your project spreads out, what's a bad news of time for Homecor?
So I'd say our quickest turnaround is typically 4 months. So that's, yeah, it will take 2 to 3 weeks to get permits, we can do exploratory demo during that time to see what we're getting into. But usually it's 4 months, or not usually, but that's about the quickest we can do. I think our average is 7 months. But if we start the timer from the time we purchase the house, it all depends on the situation. Because if we buy it from a mortgage foreclosure, there's that 6-month rescission period where the house just has to sit there before you can technically start. So if you buy it on the courthouse steps, you still have to give that previous owner 6 months to buy it back. So you have to wait 6 months to start. So that can take time, and you obviously don't want people squatting or getting in the home while you're doing it, but you're not supposed to enter the home, so it's not fun.
Are you the person who carries out that sale, or is it handed off to someone else who does it because it's not part of your job, really?
No, that's my job. So,
Is it fun?
yeah, it's something different every day. Yep.
Well, what
Yep.
is the most fun part of your job?
Oh, goodness. I do think it's just the variety that every house you walk into, you don't know what you're gonna find. And it's, if I were doing this for a homeowner, which I've done for Linda, you have people that you need to keep happy, and you need to come to them with hat in hand and say, guess what we found when we removed that paneling, and you have to explain your budget and why you went over. So I have my board that I have to answer to on, this is what I think it's gonna cost, and this is what we can sell it for. But they're not involved in the day-to-day like a homeowner would be. So that is much less stressful, obviously, for me, that I can just make the decisions as they come, because it has to be fixed. So you have to just do the best you can and maybe make it up somewhere else later in the project. But I'd say that's the most fun that I have, is just the variety of not knowing what you're gonna run into. It's always an adventure. Any
think-
last questions?
I think we could take a few minutes to do a little experiment of having you split up into groups of 2 or 3 or 4 people around you and come up with one final question you'd like to ask Amy that came up in your group.
Anything?
Do you want to do that? Let's do a small group thing for just like 5 minutes, and then we'd have a few minutes for questions.
Or I will put in the request if there's anything you want me to touch on next week.
Yes, yes.
I
Anything
will
special
be
about next
happy
week?
to-
Yes, that's a good thing. Okay, please go into a little small group for just a
Ask
couple minutes.
yourself. Because who owns them? Oh,
Okay, additional question in this group here? Anything?
I just wanted to say, I think this program is just remarkable. It's such a great idea. And it's really made Holland, people comment on how nice the city looks, and I think you've been a big part of that.
well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I just have one to ask Janet. I think it's somewhere near Maple Street. There's an old school building that they made into condominiums, and there's a playground area in between, and then there's a row of houses that have their garage on the alley.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that something you did that?
Washington School neighbor.
Yeah, the question was, if we did the Washington School redevelopment, we did not.
Okay.
Nope.
But those were, every one of those houses is private.
Yes.
houses.
Yep. All of the houses there were privately done. Yep.
I basically just have a comment. I have been in a whole class where you presented before.
Oh.
And what I remember about it, I think there was another woman who presented with you.
Mhm.
And it seemed like you were going in every home, clearing it out, doing everything yourselves. And is it still that way? It doesn't seem like maybe you have a little bit of a different type of a job with that as well. And so, but it's very interesting, and I enjoyed the class before, and this one is still great. And, you know, it's fun to see some of the new stuff, but also some of the stuff that from before,
Yeah.
and to hear about how it's all coming together. And yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
as houses go from the ridiculous to the sublime, they want to see more of the ridiculous. Is that, you want to see what it actually takes?
Yeah.
I think I can say that Amy still gets her hands dirty when the cleanup thing is going on.
Yep. Yeah. I don't want to miss any treasures. So, yeah. But yeah, Jeanette, presented with me last time, I think was 3 years ago. So, yep, but we still operate the same. Yeah, I think that was the one. So yeah, we still do the same things.
Okay, we
Jen,
have a couple questions. How many of these projects do you have going at one time? Because you're talking about some resting and
Yeah,
what happens there?
yeah, it's, our goal was to do 10 per year and we've never gotten there. The most we've gotten to is 7 per year. So that was when we typically had 4 going at a time at various stages, that some were almost done and just waiting to be sold, some were just starting. But in the last 3 years, it's been really hard to find homes. So I just have these 2 new construction going on right now. So it has slowed down for
Okay,
us.
and then we had a question about your private funds and inflation. And how big of a pot did you start with? Did you start with 100,000 or 2 million? How does that work with inflation? We know it doesn't go very far.
Yeah, we started with, let's see, a little over, just under $1 million. So most of that, like I said, was the friendly loans, the 0 interest loans that they committed to 5 years to let us work with that money. And then $50,000 to cover any losses or investments per home. So that's what we started with. $280,000 is what we've invested in those 44 homes over the years. So that's how much we've depleted that $1 million. So.
I think you said that you've done an average of, well, that wasn't counting the grants. The grants for repairs were not included in that 54 number.
Yeah.
So there are many
we'll
more
talk about
grants than there
grants.
are houses that get renovated.
Yep.
So the grants go directly to the homeowner who they own their house and they need help to repair. They already own their house and they're
Yeah,
applying
so
for
I
it.
should make this really clear that those investors are just for our renovation program. We happily accept any size donation for our grants program. So that's where we're helping somebody with their roof or helping somebody replace their furnace, and have been doing that for almost 30 years. So that we receive donations all the time of $50, $500, yeah, $5,000 is a really big donation to that program. So it's just the home renovation that we've been talking about today, that we looked for just a handful of investors who are willing to put in a big amount. But the grants program, we rely on just smaller donations.
Okay, so the smaller donations, the donor is saying goodbye to their $50 to 200 or whatever they're going to give. And then, as Amy will explain next week, the grant program is owner participation. You always have the owner contribute something.
Yep.
And that's according to a scale that you'll
Yep.
explain.
Yeah, based
as
on
to
their
how the
income.
owner must participate in the grant too. It's not just an outright grant.
Correct.
And then it'll be a big range of things that are interesting story all by itself.
Yep.
And you'll also be able to, you have a little pamphlet, don't you, that summarizes your annual reports on what the
Mhm.
grants were. So that'll be probably part of the presentation next week that we'll see.
Yes, it
Okay.
will.
Thank you, Amy, and
Yep,
we'll see
you're
you
welcome.
next week.
Thanks.